live?
We are live.
We're live. All right. Well, let's just dive right in. I actually wanted to start with why I wanted to have this particular Zoom. So the four of us, gosh, right before the lockdown. So that would have been first week of March or something. We had dinner.
Yeah, March 11th.
March 11th, which we hadn't done in forever. I mean, when was the last time the four of us had dinner?
Well, the last time anyone
2 or 3 years.
paid for anything.
Yeah.
I think we were cashing a big check.
Well, I remember I was there at the March 11th dinner for 5 hours. That was, and then I went home and you guys kept hanging out. I had my fill of you guys.
You actually did pretty good staying out.
Well, actually, I appreciated the call. I appreciated the call we got from Emily saying, "Where is my husband?"
That's right.
Amber alert. Okay, so
Amber alert.
when we were eating, Raj mentioned that there's a phrase, at least in Atlanta, called the SpunMafia, and I thought we'd kick off with that. Raj, explain sort of what that means and what context you heard it in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard it from a couple of folks, but I think Sims actually is the one who first introduced me. Then I started hearing it with a couple other folks. But basically, everyone's like, you guys started off Spun, and then you seem to have your hands into everywhere. Jeff's into things, and Danny's into things, and Ragu's into things, and you're into things. Like, every company I come across, somehow there's one of you guys in there. Is there like some kind of mafia going on? So.
And then, of course, there's the PayPal mafia. Ragu, what's that?
Yeah, so not only was it a good company in and of itself, but coming out of that, probably about 20 other firms started out of it. The original funder behind Facebook, not the founder, but the funder. Also Elon Musk and a whole bunch of other people, and probably 20 other firms, including LinkedIn, et cetera, came out of it. So they have even a better legacy than they did what they had originally started. But I'm sure they all look back at PayPal and wonder if they were any happier than they were back then.
Yeah, like we do.
Yeah. Segue.
Yeah, segue. So before we dive way back, which, we had Spunlogic from 1998 to 2008, so it's been quite a while. How about we all just go around and tell everybody what we're doing now, and then we'll jump into it. Let's start with Raj.
Sure, yeah. So today I'm president of a company called Brightwave. So still in the marketing digital space. So running the agency back in the agency world and loving it.
Nice. Danny?
Yep, CTO de novo right now. So lead up all the product innovation, development work, software development work, database, security, all the stuff that we need to do on the technology front with de novo.
And you've been there how long?
I've been there 3 years in March.
And Ragu?
Yeah, 1 year after my non-compete ended in 2015, I joined up with a couple of other great business folks here in town, and we founded 44, which has been growing really well since then. And we focus on e-commerce and a lot of other brand platform pieces, and it's been a great ride.
Nice. So I have a company called Dragon Army, and then I'm involved in a few nonprofits, and I have wonderful artists in my household that have done some background art for me. Okay, so I guess for anybody,
hey, didn't Raj do that top right one? He did that top right one, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that looks like my handiwork.
It does. It does. You used to be our creative director, so
exactly. That's why
I recognize the color scheme.
Yeah. Hey, don't give me some spray paints, and then it goes to hell.
Roger's real skills was copywriting, so he was sadly underused.
Yeah. We're going to get into Raj's spelling should we have time. some excellent stories there. So for anybody that wasn't around, because good Lord, there's people that I run into that weren't born when we started our company. I gave a talk. I gave a talk at UGA to their entrepreneurship class last year, and as I was going through the sort of our history, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, we started Spunlogic in 1998. How many of you were born after that? And everybody in the room was born after that. I mean, that's crazy. They weren't even alive when we started that company. So, all right. So the quick story was we started in the dorm room at UNC Charlotte. Over the next couple of years, all four of us came together, and it took us, I like to tell the story as it took us about 5 years, first 5 years of the business to sort of figure out how to even run a company, build a business. And then the last 5 years, we doubled every year, ultimately getting to around 70, 75 employees and selling in 2008, so year 10. So I'm going to go all the way back. And I was trying to remember, Raghu, when did you join Spunlogic?
I would guess Drunken Rod was part of my life basically in maybe 99 or 2000, but I didn't actually become work alongside Rod for probably about 2 years after that. If I wasn't so old, I'd remember exactly.
I feel like it was maybe either 2004 or 2003, around about that time frame.
Yeah, I was
you in Miami
was when. Yeah, in 2002, Raj was denied exit from this country because he was here illegally on a expired visa.
I was not,
and he was. Yeah, and he wasn't allowed to join his family on a Caribbean cruise, and therefore he and I hung out in Miami and drank because he couldn't actually leave this country at the time. And that's when the original idea of coming on board Spun was hatched together with him.
So I have to ask, because the stage of the company at that point, I mean, let's be honest, Raj and Danny, we were a disaster at that point, right? We were hemorrhaging money.
I don't know when we weren't a disaster, to say the truth.
It's fair. It's a fair point. But I got to ask, Raghu, what did you see that you were like, I got to be a part of this thing with these guys?
Yeah, I really want to know. I just got him too drunk. That's all. He just gave into it.
It's probably an embarrassing that we were actually drinking this place called the Banana Bungalow, which doesn't sound good, but it was really just a youth hostel. But I think a big part of it was, I wanted to get back to Atlanta because I had been in Atlanta originally before when I first met Raj. And it was time to give it a shot. I knew that no matter what we did, we couldn't screw up the fact that the internet was going to keep growing. We tried to screw that up, but we couldn't. But even with a few missteps, I knew that the direction was the right direction, and I knew people wanted what we were trying to do. And I think when you align with good people, you figure it out, and you have the patience to figure it out together. If we didn't get along, and if we weren't patient, we would have given up. And that was definitely the wrong thing to do, because if you stuck to it, digital was going to grow. They needed what we could do, and given enough time, we'd be successful. Mm-hmm. Well, plus I was going out with a girl up there that I figured I'd want to meet back up with, and we ended up getting married, so all that worked out as well.
Always comes down to a girl.
Yeah.
So when I look back at what we did, and certainly jump in if there's specific things you guys remember about that time, but I think about the culture. And I think that's what I hear from most people that were a part of it, that they look back to the culture. Danny, you've started companies since, joined companies since. What are your thoughts on the culture that we built?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint exactly how we did that, and I'm sure I think what I've learned since then about culture is that culture really does stem from the top of the organization. So it started with our CEO back then. That was you, Jeff. And then I think that the four of us really embraced the need for a great culture in the company. And even though we were young and didn't know everything we were doing, I think the fact that we wanted a company that had integrity, we wanted to make sure we took care of people, we wanted to do our best to put people first. I think, those things really played out in our decision making and helped build a fun culture. We wanted to have fun too. We wanted to work hard and we wanted to have fun. And we found ways to I think, to get everybody else on board with the same way of thinking. But if it doesn't come from the top, then it's really hard to build and maintain a good culture. And somehow we managed to do it, even though we were young and weren't sure exactly, we didn't have a playbook. We were just making it up as we were going along.
Mm-hmm. And I should point out, Raj and Raghu are not just wearing tacky shirts, that they're actually wearing Spunlogic Cruise. Raghu's got a cruise shirt, and Raj, what does yours say?
Mine's the add to favorite when that was a thing. And we had really bad business cards, if you remember correctly, Ed.
The best. They were the best.
Did we ever have good? Did we have good business cards? Was that a thing? I'm not sure we had good ones ever.
I feel like at some stage we actually had some decent.
So we did fun things like made shirts and so forth, but we also did the cruises, which that's a cruise shirt that Raghu has on. But they didn't as cruises, did they? Annual cruises.
No. It started off with a ski trip, right?
That's right.
In Mont Blanc. No, Mont Blanc was the first one.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, cold as hell, right?
Yeah.
Really cold, and it was a blast. I mean, most of the folks who went with us hadn't even left the country, right? Mm-hmm. So we're in Montreal, flew into Montreal, and froze our asses off, and we tried to then do the cruise, and then another ski trip. Which I'm sure we can remind Raghu that he threw up on the top of the mountain a couple of times. So we ended up sticking with the cruise because it was best for everyone. It was actually more cost effective. It was just a good way to contain and kind of meet spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, whatever it was, and ended up being the legacy, if you will, of Spun.
Now I know that what happens on a cruise is supposed to stay on a cruise, but does anybody have any particular memories or stories? We did have that from a few people that saw we were going to do this that asked, share some stories from the cruises. No,
Danny,
no one's willing?
you can go first.
I'm trying to think of some. I don't remember most of the cruises.
Well, I remember. I'll throw one out there real fast. So so I didn't know we were in the midst of fame until years later. Right. But remember Janelle?
Yes.
Janelle Montoya. We were all singing Monet. Sorry, Monet. We all singing karaoke. We had a sales guy back in the day, Tony Kennard, who actually had a pretty damn decent voice. Pretty amazing to see. I think actually throughout our entire Spun career, we actually ended up with a couple of great, artists and singers and so forth that came through or connected to the agency.
Well, somewhere on my old BlackBerry that I have in my closet, I have a video of Janelle Monáe singing "Killing Me Softly" by the Fugees while on the cruise. So that's probably worth more than my stock in 44. So I better keep a hold of that.
Yeah. I have a photo of her from the cruise, but she actually, one of the cruises coincided with my birthday, and she sang "Happy Birthday." And to Raj's point, she was not famous or anything at that point, but she sang, and we were all like, "Holy cow!" And she was the girlfriend of one of our Flash designers, right?
Yeah, Trey. Yeah,
Trey. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good memory. So somebody asked what the biggest disagreement we had. Did we always just have consensus on ideas, or did we have some big disagreements along the way, the four of us?
I'm sure we always had some disagreements here and there. I just can't remember any of them being massive enough.
Danny?
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think only Raj wanted Raghu to join the company, right? So I think that was a big fight.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that.
Luckily, you recovered from that mistake.
That's right. That's right. I agree with Raj. I have a hard time remembering a specific argument that was huge. I mean, I know we had disagreements, but I think that was just something that was great about us as a team, was that we would disagree, we would put it on the table, but then we did something really important, which was once the decision was made, we all got behind it. And there was no backbiting. There was no telling people that we disagreed with it. We all got on board. We got our teams to agree with it, and we moved forward. And I think that's rare, honestly, in what I see in a lot of companies and cultures today, that, you know, most people, they nod their head but leave the room and don't get on board. So I think that was a really powerful thing we had going for the four of us. Trying to think of a specific disagreement, though. I wish I had one.
I have some memory, not of the four of us, but one of the two of you, Danny and Raj, one of you threw a stapler at the other. Does that sound familiar?
No, that was Raj. I thought he threw it at you.
I threw a stapler?
Was it at me? Raj,
one of you
threw it at me? I remember that. I remember that story. He did definitely threw a stapler. Maybe it was at me then. I remember the story.
I think it was at Colony Square, wasn't it?
I was going to go Zonalite, but maybe it was Colony Square. It was maybe Zonalite, because we had that big open office at Zonalite.
Okay, so the offices went the dorm room, and then my mom's basement, and then we had the little fitness center. Somebody did want some stories from the fitness center, so we can dive back to that.
Oh, man.
Then from the fitness center, we actually moved to Colony Square. We were subleasing 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, it was from Lordak and Sargent.
Lordak Sargent, an architecture firm.
And we took those cubicles from an old Bell office. I remember that.
You remember that? We found out. So this is the kind of thing we would do back then. This must have been year 3 or 2 of the company. We found out that there was an old abandoned office space, and they had a Bell South. Was it Bell South?
Bell South, yeah.
They'd left all these giant cubes, and we went and disassembled them. And I don't know if I have done anything harder since than disassembling, 1990s
Nothing
cubes,
harder.
Right?
Yeah, big tall cubes.
Those things are a nightmare.
Keep in mind, I don't think any of us had actually sat in a cubicle before.
Never.
No, we've never been in one. Let's take one apart.
And it was one thing to take them apart, but then to reassemble them at the new office, we were like, I don't even remember what these things looked like.
It took forever. Yeah. We had some crooked walls and stuff too. It was not a professional job. It was missing panels, I'm sure.
It was free furniture.
That's right. That's right. And then from there we went to Zonalite, right? And that's when we met.
Then we actually moved across this hallway and shared with Think Monster for a little bit.
Oh, yes.
That's right. Yeah. You had that glass office. That's one of the best stories with Tyler's contract.
Oh yeah, we actually have several good stories from that. Why don't you tell what we had one employee we used to mess with a lot.
So we had an employee join us as our only other sales guy besides us, right? It was like one of our first attempts. Oh, it was after Donovan, I think was after Donovan was with us. He was no longer with us, right? And then we had one of our first new sales guys we had come on. His name was Tyler Davis. And when he joined the company, his first day, we gave him his employment contract and he signed it. Well, we modified his contract to include a couple of Easter eggs. Like one of them said that he would have to turn over his firstborn and name it Spunlogic, name his firstborn after the company. And another one was something like he would forfeit his salary for 6 months or something. I mean, it was pretty bad stuff. Well, he didn't really read the contract. He signed it, handed it over to Jeff. Jeff walked we had an office. He shared an office with Wade back then, I think, right? Or you and I shared an office or something. There was a glass wall with a glass door. So he walked in, he shut the door and locked it, took the contract, highlighted the things that were in it, and held it up against the window so that Tyler could read it from the other side of the wall. That was fantastic. It was great.
Poor guy. But now
Poor guy.
it was in that office that we changed the name of the company. But why don't we we started as NBN Designs, nothing but net. But then we changed the name. But what were some of the names that we that we thought we liked?
Brainstick.
Brainstick. I remember Brainstick.
Code word 9, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. There's a few. I remember going to that AMO event.
Cracker Snap, of course.
Cracker Snap. We actually thought Cracker Snap
Yeah.
was going to be the
We thought
name.
that was it. We thought Cracker
We
Snap
spent
was it.
days in
That's
the
right.
conference room, and we came out and we're like, "It's Cracker Snap, guys."
Cracker Snap. We mic dropped that name. We walked out. We were like, Cracker Snap. That's right. And then we all got a night sleep. We came back. We were like, what are we thinking?
Yeah.
It was the worst.
No. I remember Wade Forrest when we told him that. I think even Ken was there. They were like, "Get back in that room." Renaming your company that.
All right, so then who remembers how Spunlogic came to be? The name.
We came up with that name in that room. We came up with a bunch of names, and then we went to an AIMA event, and we all
right. But who came up with the name?
Oh man,
I remember.
Scott.
Yeah.
Who?
So we had
Scott
one
did?
developer. We were all trying to
Scott
brainstorm
Thompson.
together, and we had one developer over in the corner on a computer, just hitting keys, and we're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm looking up different synonyms and whatever." And Spunlogic was one of the 2 words he put together, and we ended up coming back to it. But Raj, tell the story of how we landed on it.
Yeah, so we couldn't figure out which name was going to be perfect because, to be honest, we were probably fried sitting in a room for like God knows how many hours. So we were going to an AIMA event, and each of us wore, instead of our names, the name tag, we put one of the company names, and literally just went around the room saying, "Hey, you like this name? What you like this name?" And then everyone just basically liked Spunlogic better than the other names, and that's literally how we chose it.
That's right. And then one of my favorite. Go ahead.
I was saying we'll come back to how Cracker Snap came back into being a few years later.
That's right.
The funny thing about the way we selected that company name is that's how I've named all of my kids since then at the hospital.
Walk in the halls.
Just walk the halls. The father of, and I put 3 different names. I'm like, which name do you like the best? Worked out great.
I love it. So then we're now Spunlogic. We left Colony Square. That's when we went to Zonalite, and then we were there for like 3 years, right? We moved into 360i. Had thought they were going to expand, Dave Williams and Brian, and they had created a really nice space, but then they never moved into it. So then we got to move into all the fresh build out that they did.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and we shared the color orange, so we didn't really need to paint the walls.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But,
and then after that,
I do remember, I think me and Danny probably stuck in the roof doing cabling, pulling cat.
We pulled all the cable for that office. Yep, we did.
That's right.
We wired the whole thing.
Jeff built the wonkiest door.
That was so funny.
Yeah. So, it was an interesting.
We literally would build and
sure.
we painted it, and then we did a family paint day. Right, we all came in painted the rest. What was outside of the orange we kept, we painted the rest of the office, and our whole family and friends came in and helped us paint it. That was great.
You know what was also interesting about that office? It was the first big spun party we had. That big Halloween party. That was the first time we did a big party. Yeah.
Was that the one we had the fortune tellers, or was that the second one? We started doing several Halloweens, didn't we?
Oh, I don't know if I could afford fortune tellers for the first one.
Yeah.
I don't think so. We did have the ice luge, right?
Yeah, we did have the ice luge.
Yeah,
that party.
That was a 5-year. That was a 5-year party. But it was good. I mean, you knew our clients liked us when they would put their mouth on our logo of the ice luge and take shots from it. So it was both fun and good branding.
So then we went from there to Promenade, right? And we were in Promenade the rest of the time. We were first on the 13th floor.
17th.
Then
17th and then the 22nd.
Yeah. 17th and 22nd. And eventually we had a whole floor in that high rise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there still Publicis agency people in there?
I don't know if there's Publicis agency. Yeah, I know Digitas moved into that 22nd floor.
Yeah, Razorfish, Digitas, whatever their latest name is. May I suggest they rebrand to Cracker Snap?
So somebody asked, and I get asked this quite a bit. Did we have a plan for selling the company, and sort of as that came to be, in 07, 08? Was it an easy decision? Was it unanimous? But, my recollection is we were talking about building the company to a point where we could sell it early on, right?
Yeah.
From the day that I joined you and Raj, that's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But I don't know if we ever knew what that was or what size.
Right.
We just, because also keep in mind we started it in the midst, right before and certainly during the whole .com thing. So that was our level of exposure. I don't know.
Right.
Probably Raghu is the only one who really had the best level of exposure of what a company is long term, kind of thing. We thought that's what you do with a company. You build it and sell it, because that's what
well, we talked about it, and one of the early things was we had a long, mission, vision statement, and we were saying to be sought after. And I remember we were asking ourselves, what do we mean by being sought after? And we're like, well, clients come to us because they want great work, but also companies come to us because they know they can't build what we've created in themselves. They would at some point seek after us because that was the only way that they were going to attain that ability. So we thought sought after was sort of encompassing people wanting to work with us, but also people wanting to buy us at some point. And I think we ended up doing a meeting at Lake Oconee about a year and a half before we sold in the winter. And it's the only time I remember Raj golfing with us. And I think at that point we said, hey, these are the metrics we'd like to continue if we are going to be going to market. But at the same time, if that doesn't pan out, we want all that effort to also create a better company too, and not just dress us up for sale. And I think that was the key to A, know that Rod should never golf again, and B, that we get all the pieces in place to go out and do the sale.
Right.
Raj hit somebody in their cart, right? Who did he hit? Did he hit you, Raghu?
With the golf ball, yes.
Yeah, somebody hit somebody on a golf cart. After they teed off, it veered off to the right and nailed somebody's golf cart. And I think it was
stapler, golf ball. What else have I thrown or hit?
Did you never hit me with anything?
He's a dangerous guy.
Well, one other aspect about like selling, I also think that I don't think any of us really started off like, hey, let's go create a company, right? We kind of all fell into it and everything else. And I also think that there was an aspect of, gosh, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Let's grow this to a point where someone else professional could take this, right? Because I also remember like when we were trying to like, should we go into multiple offices and stuff like that? We were, heading up advisors back then. We're like, we're not equipped to do this. We do not know what the hell we're doing. So at some level, we're going to grow this where we just don't know what to do anymore. In hindsight, we could have probably done just as good a job as the next folks coming in, right? But I think the mindset was like, oh my gosh, we'll take this as far as we can go, and then someone else is going to be much better at this than we could have ever been at this.
Much better.
Yeah, and I think
much better.
I think you go back to. I think if you go back to, Jeff, your question of, did we build it to sell it? I think we all did. There was a point where we got together and said, we're going to build this to sell it. And it guided a lot of the decisions we were making. I mean, you would go out and get advice from other leaders, and you would talk to other people, and we would look at most of our decisions from the mindset of, hey, what things will make this company the most valuable? And what's really interesting and special about it was we did it in a way that we also created a great culture and didn't make it all about creating a company we wanted to sell.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Totally. And I remember, so I think if I'm getting my dates right, late 2006, we were approached by agency.com and to acquire us. And that was the first, well, that wasn't the first. Do you remember when we went down to Florida and tried to sell half the company?
Right? Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
What was that, like Raghu, were you around then?
Raghu wasn't there yet.
I heard about, I wasn't there yet. Yeah.
So like year 3, what were the terms? Did you remember?
It was like 60% for maybe 100
150,
grand.
right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was losing
It was
control.
Terrible terms. It was terrible terms.
Yeah. The guy did have a kick-ass penthouse, though.
He did.
He did.
It,
The penthouse was amazing.
Panama City or Tampa? What
As
was it?
Destin.
Destin,
yeah.
right? I think it was in Destin. Yeah.
And I think we wanted to do it, right? Did he pull out or did we pull out?
He pulled out. He was like, "Listen, guys, I think you guys should keep on going."
It would be a better story if we had.
Yes. I think we were desperate for we probably had payroll debt, we had credit card debt, everything.
Cash.
We were like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
So then the first real offer I would say we got was in late 2006 by agency.com, and that came out of nowhere. And so we entertained it, and the offer was too low. But I think in the course of that,
it was like 1.1 million. I think is but kind of funny terms to even get there.
I think it was 5.
Well,
it was 5.
1 was guaranteed. A 5 was potential, and there was a lot. It was
definitely too low. And but I remember who was in the room when I called and told the CEO, and he was screaming at me. Somebody was in my office when I did that. I
was there.
He expected the phone call to be, yes, we're doing this. And we had decided not to, so I had to call him and tell him. And I was talking to him, and I was sort of, smoothly telling him, we're not going to do this deal. And he just started going, wait, he's like, what are you saying to me? And just started screaming at me and said, I'd never work in this business again. This is the worst decision I've ever made. We're screwed. He's going to insure it. And then he tossed the phone to his assistant, who I guess was in the car with him. And then that guy's like, I'm so sorry. He's just upset. I was like, okay, we made the right decision there.
No doubt. Wow.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
But then that kicked it off, right? Then we talked to some private equity firms.
We hired an investment bank and started getting all our stuff in order, accounting, all the stuff that we did the minimal amount before, we suddenly did in the most professional way, and got an investment bank. I think that we signed that deal like January of 2017, and kicked that process off. And then I think we put the book out at the end of summer because they said nobody in Wall Street works in August.
They did say that, but they also, and kudos to them, they said, look, you need 6 more months of this kind of growth before you're really attractive in the market. And so we did that, and luckily we kept growing. And then it came down to 2. It came down to 2 companies that were really bidding the highest. There was Engauge, and then did the other one even have a name?
Hagen Direct Marketing.
Yeah.
Which was backed by Lake Capital.
Yeah, Lake Capital.
So a good story on that. Jeff and I were doing the road tour, basically going to the different firms representing all 4 of us. But meanwhile, Danny and Rod were really making sure the company kept running well while we were traveling a lot. So we were going to different places, and I remember we went to Lake Capital, and their offices are on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, or the Magnificent Mile. And they had a penthouse at the top of this Gothic tower that you could walk out on this patio. And they walked out there, showed us up and down this thing exactly, what they had. Mentioned they had a private plane that they would take to fly to different deals. And we thought for sure we had made it. We were literally on top of the world. And that would be our, who we'd go with. And that's before we actually met the company they wanted to combine us with. So I think we were more impressed with the private equity firm than we were with the company that actually was buying us, because they mostly did postcards and wanted to go digital with us. They had a very good postcard business, though. I mean, it probably would have paid off really well.
Yeah. And then we ended up signing the letter of intent November 1st of 07 with Halyard and Engauge.
Yeah. Though, Jeff, you skipped over one thing. Right before we signed that letter of intent, oddly enough, again in Chicago, I don't know why, it was Chicago again, but we went to the DMA Awards and met Bruce Etra from the private equity firm Halyard Capital, and we met him there. We met Stan Rapp there, I think, as well. And Jeff also met a random older French man in a bar. And
no. Let me pause there. Let me pause there because that sounds interesting.
Jeff and random old French guys, huh?
So I had gotten my biggest speaking opportunity it was at this AMA conference. It was in a breakout room, but like fit 300. And so I go into to do my talk, and it's one of the things where it's like there's 4 going on simultaneously. I go in there, I'm prepared. The time starts, and there's literally 4 people in a 300-person room, and I have to deliver my presentation. I don't know why nobody came, but that Frenchman was one of the people that came. And then afterwards, he was like, clapping. He loved it. And then he said, "Hey, can you meet up later? I want to get to know you, whatever." And so I grabbed Raghu, and then we went to the bar. But yeah, he was 25% of the audience of my talk.
Yeah, he actually invited Jeff and I and to come to France, to go to Paris to meet him and his company, and go speak at literally the Paris Hilton. Who would have known that there was a person with the same name, and do some speeches in French. So we had French slides that we were speaking over in English, to this audience while we were closing the deal with and about to sign the letter of intent. And meanwhile, in the middle of it, we all had gone out for dinner and come back. Dolly had joined us on the trip, and we'd all gone out together for a nice meal and went back to our hotel rooms. And then we got a call that Ruth Chris had decided to sign with us, which was like supposedly $1 million deal. Blah, blah, blah. House and crisis later, maybe it wasn't. But at that time, it was like over $1 million. And that was going to like turbocharge the sale. And we all went back out and found a bar that was open late and drank. And we're like, this is going to be a done deal when we get back. And then we told everybody, we're selling the company. And we have the letter of intent signed. So we were kind of going out on a high note.
Yeah. So the question is, when we look back at that, somebody had asked, I don't think I know we flip-flopped, right? Raj, what's your memory of that? We flip-flopped a little between Halyard and Lake and the 2 deals, but once it came down to it, were we all pretty much on the same page to go with Engauge and Halyard?
Yeah, it really came down to the best of. It was really hard to assess which one was actually going to make it through because, a lot of the deal structures with agencies are a mixture of both, cash and equity in the next entity, if you will, right? So I think, looking back, it's funny. I don't know how much diligence we really did. Probably not enough. In hindsight, we were going by feeling and also really advice from our bankers and everything else. So I don't know if we could have made a right or wrong decision at that point. We were just like, go with what feels right at the time.
All I know is the final result was it was literally like 4 times the money that we were offered by agency.com just like 8 months earlier.
Yeah.
That and somebody up there promised me a Ohio State season tickets if we signed with them. So that sort of put my vote tilted in that favor.
There was one other aspect. I do remember, like, one thing that we were weighing was with which company are we going to be in a better driving seat, and are people going to be in better driving seats? Right.
I agree with that. And I think I remember Engauge. We like us believing in the vision of what Engauge was trying to do, and I think we thought we had a good shot at pulling that off. I like that. I remember that.
Yeah. Also, Stan Rapp is a legend in the industry, and Hagen had a good business, but it was when you looked at somebody like Stan, like kind of the vision he was selling, and honestly, their model allowed Atlanta to run itself for the most part. Versus being integrated immediately, which, kind of was true, became more true later on, that we were able to run Atlanta in our model. And I think after a couple of years of trying to figure that out, that really came out to be true.
So I think in the next episode, we'll talk about Engauge and that story. I remember when we had finalized the deal, we took everybody over Four Seasons across the street to tell the whole company. Do you remember that, Danny?
No, I thought we told them in the office. We took them to Four Seasons.
I think we took the leadership team. I think it was a leadership team
To the Four Seasons.
To Four Seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the leadership interviews were with the company that, was picking it up. But actually, just prior to that, Jeff, there was the last cruise. The way that the timing happened, because we were going through due diligence and all the other stuff, and basically also being very firm on getting the best deal terms, because we had a backup offer. So we were really drawing out the close to make sure we kept our terms. The last cruise, which was like February of 2008, happened to be before the sale. And I remember Jeff's like, geez, what if while the bus is driving down to Fort Lauderdale, the bus crashes and the sale doesn't happen? And I'm like, but I'm really happy, because I'm not sure we would have had the cruise if we had sold before it, because new company, new rules, and new responsibilities. So we actually got one last cruise, and I think there was 140 people that we took on that last cruise.
Two chartered buses.
Yeah, the buses were fun.
Yeah, so we had one last great ride down to Florida together, one last great cruise together before we became the next thing. And I think that was really great, because honestly, we brought on a lot of people who had just been new hires on that last cruise, who had, I think everybody remembered that for a long time, that downturn over the next couple of years before we could keep growing again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was March of 2008, and then very shortly after that, the whole, our entire economy in this country and the world went absolutely bananas. And what I found really striking was there was a company, we won't name the name of the agency, but there was a West Coast agency that over the years was always ahead of us, and they were always a little bit better than us, and they used to beat us for this one account we used to pitch all the time, and they had huge brands, and so we sort of looked to them. They were always 25% bigger than us, and we thought they were just amazing and had great reputation, won all these national awards. And then later, maybe a year later, they were trying to sell their company, and it was for like a fourth of what we sold for in March of 2008. Like, that's how much value they had lost, and they were desperate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a bright note, April of 2008 was our highest revenue month ever in Atlanta.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Good timing. Good timing.
Let's tell one more story, and then we'll wrap this up. I was trying to remember, at Spun, we never had to do layoffs, but there was that moment where we almost did, and I just couldn't remember if that was Spun or early Engauge days. I thought it must have been Spun.
It was, because it was Home Depot that saved it.
Yeah. Does everybody remember that being Spun? Okay. Because that's what I thought.
That was in the Zonalite office, right? Was that Zonalite?
No,
we
were
in Promenade.
No. Yeah, it was in Promenade. Yeah.
And had we lost some stuff? Is that why we were at that point?
I can't remember what happened, but I know that we had lost maybe a major account or two. Something had changed. And you want to talk about the general size of it and what happened? I believe we were laying off maybe 15 or 20 people.
I think it was 15
to 20. It was a pretty big layoff. What I remember at that story.
Actually, you know what? That was early Engauge. It was early Engauge. We had already had Home Depot.
It might have been around.
Yeah, it was. We already had Home Depot, but it was a modest size. And then we were trying to figure out how to handle some of the downturn that fall in 2008. And right before we had to do the cuts, Home Depot said, e-commerce is a pretty big thing. And that the size of that account grew, because I remember.
Specifically, though, what happened was there was it was a gigantic amount of work, and we were literally, maybe it was going to be a Friday morning, we were going to do the cuts. We had, as much as we could rehearsed it. The whole leadership was, we just we had it all planned out. I think there were going to be 2 meetings happening, right? One with the
There are
people
going to be
being
2
let
meetings,
go.
yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was going to happen that next morning. And Home Depot called, and I remember talking to the person, and they said, okay, we're down to 2 and we really like you guys. We want to come early next week and walk the halls, and literally said, and just make sure you have enough people to do all the work that we have. And I remember going, what? So then quickly grabbed you guys, and we're like, we literally can't do this right now. It's not only, we couldn't even fake it, but if word got out that we had let go of a bunch of people, if that was their big concern.
Yeah.
Well, what happened to me was I was actually out when you guys got the news. So I was out that day at a client site all day. So we had planned to have 2 different groups, and one group was going to stay, one group was going to go. And when I came back from the meeting, I mean, I like walked in just in time to have the meeting, and I walked into the room where we were going to tell everybody they were staying. And when I walked in, and everybody was there, including the people who were supposed to be cut. And so I thought there was a big mistake. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to fail miserably. There are people in the room that shouldn't be here. I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And I'm running around. I'm trying to find you guys going, what happened? You know, like these people shouldn't be here. And then I found out as I was walking in the room that we had, you know, basically that had happened with Home Depot and we weren't making the cut. So I remember that day.
We forgot to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I was gone. It was just happening while I was out of the office.
Yeah.
It was before I owned a cell phone, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, a funny follow-up on that. Bruce, I was in a meeting with Bruce and we were talking about growth. And I think Jeff was out because one of your many kids was born or something. And I was sitting in on the board meeting. And I was like, the rest of the company up in Columbus and Florida,
it's possible,
they were still sitting up.
Just you know, it's possible that's when I was like, I'm boycotting these board meetings, which will be on our next episode.
Yeah. So other people were reporting how they had this cutback in the other offices, and I said, you know, Home Depot keeps growing. We can't find enough people. We keep looking to add more, and at that time, Home Depot was paying us net 90. And we're like, well, whatever, it's not, the private equity firm owns us. And they go, Bruce looked at me and said, if you keep succeeding at Home Depot like this, we're going to go broke.
Classic. And we love Bruce. I mean,
yeah.
I should say, and then we'll wrap, because there's only so much video a person can watch. There's several parts of that I think we really liked Halyard. They were super fair to us and took care of us, and Stan was great. And then there's other people we can talk about next time we get together. We've got lots of topics, by the way. I've got like a whole page of stuff that people asked about, including Raj's spelling, which we'll talk about next time. I have some great questions like who was the best ping pong, or who are the top 5 ping pong players in the company. Raj's epic drinking. So we've got lots of stuff to come back to. But it was just really good to see you guys. I'm glad we did this.
Cool.
Yeah, you too.
Awesome. Next pandemic.
Yeah, right. That's right. Well,
Great. Can't wait to talk to you guys again.
I'll try to wear a Spun shirt next time.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. Take it easy. Bye.
Take care.